So my name is Tony Foggett. I'm the CEO and one of the founders of Code Computer Love. We're a digital agency based in Manchester. We initially launched as a trio working out of a tiny office in Stockport, came back into the centre of Manchester and have kind of enjoyed some pretty organic growth from that beginnings to now, where we're sort of an 80-strong business. With our last revolution, there was a particular shift we made from working in really siloed departments of the creatives over there, the development team over there, the user experience here, and they would call themselves teams, but ultimately they weren't teams at all. They were just people who had the same job title. And we worked in a waterfall process where our projects would go through each of these teams, and they would just concentrate on their piece of that project. Two things that really stuck out to me. One was that the group of people that were working on the projects were never actually really coming together as a team. Like, their goal was just their piece of the pie. And no one was concentrating on the thing that was really most important, which was the end result that we were going to deliver for the client. So one of the shifts we made more recently was to completely get rid of that departmental structure in the business and to create multidisciplinary teams that come together around the projects and clients, so that they're all keeping a view on what that end picture is, and are all focusing on essentially what goes out of the door of code.
My name is Steve Carsey. I'm the Director of Television and Online for Sassy Films. In that capacity, I oversee the development and creative strategy for all our broadcast operations across traditional TV and online platforms. One of the aspects of Sassy which we take great pride in is our under one roof production model, our concept to delivery ability to execute any kind of idea in any platform and in any genre. And that comes into its own when you're working with very tight budgets. The fact that we don't ever have to go out of house for graphics or for post-production or for studio work, it's all under one roof. One great example of that is that we did a series earlier this year for Sky, and it was also picked up by a few networks internationally, of a show called Video Surf, which was essentially a celebration of viral content, very much in the spirit of You've Been Framed, but meets YouTube. It was a traditional 13 times half-hour TV series.
Coming up, the finest fails, the funniest felines, and our favourite fumbles.
The particular production challenges of this series were actually less about the technical side of things. We've got a very fluid operation here in terms of ingesting content, getting the content from one source into our edit suites and then back into our audio suites. The whole building is networked, so we're actually very used to dealing with the media. The actual workflow processes that were the most challenging and required us to evolve our practices a little bit was the actual creative process, the actual writing and the actual editing process, because we're used to working in short form. These were full half-hour shows. The source material we were working with was funny, but we had to make it funnier through great writing and great ideas. And the only way we could do that and stay within budget was to have a very, very tight timeline and a very tight turnaround. Having to sit in the edit suite and, to be honest, make compromises on the comedy, because frankly, if we didn't get it out of the door, we'd be going over budget, was the challenge. Slightly frustrating, but we kind of raised our game, and I don't think we delivered anything that was below standard at all across the whole series.
Another thing that was introduced with the latest iteration of code and changed to how we work is, as well as those multidisciplinary teams, they then now use Scrum methodologies in the way that they work and organise. Scrum is, in simple terms, it consists of a few rituals that the teams follow. They have things called sprints, which is where they chunk their work up into, say, 2 weeks worth of work. They do that collectively together, so they get buy-in to their commitment to delivering that work. They also input into that decision and have the autonomy of choosing who does what. They then collectively take responsibility for delivering that 2-week chunk. At the end of that 2 week, they do a retrospective where they look back at the other 2 weeks as they burn down that list of work, and they feed back to one another in terms of what's gone well, what could be improved, and set themselves goals that they collectively and personally want to achieve for the next sprint. Also, throughout that 2-week process, every day, for just literally 10-15 minutes, they do what's something called a stand-up, which is where they will go over to their project board, which is where they have a list of all that 2-week chunked up work, and each person will stand up and say, this is what I did yesterday, this is what I'm going to be doing today, and here's something that might be getting in the way of me achieving that. So there's a real transparency that's happening on a day-to-day level about where they're actually up to. Scrum's been a real revelation both to the teams and to the clients. So we actually involve the client in those retrospectives at the end of the 2 weeks, wherever we can. And that really brings them into the team environment and helps both build empathy for the client from the team, but also for the team from the client. Don't fall back on process to get performance inside your organisation. When you move up into a managerial position, it sometimes becomes the default thing you can do, which is to put steps in to control what's going on around you. And actually that can be something that in fact gets in the way of the very thing you were trying to achieve.